sliceofscifi.com.
Hey, this is George at Hypno Comics, and I'm here with Dave Dorman for part 2. He was nice enough to stick around with us, and you know, we're just kind of chewing the fat, as they say, and we ran out of time the last time. So thanks for sticking around.
My pleasure.
I know you got places to be. You're a busy guy, so
nothing more important than this. We're good. We're good.
Flattery, sir.
We're good.
I like it. So let's talk about the state of the industry a little bit.
Okay.
Where do we start? I mean, let's start with, we were talking about some of the technology and how it's impacting creators and their work. You know, digital medium, the Wacom tablets.
Yeah, that's definitely right now is you do have a generation of artists that have never touched traditional mediums.
Right.
Pencils, brushes, paints, everything's been done and being taught in schools digitally. Mm-hmm. And you know, that certainly is understandable considering the technology that's available.
Sure.
And the way that the product, you know, goes through production and gets to the consumer. You know, you're seeing much more interest in electronic books and electronic comics than you are with, you know, hard copies. Mm-hmm. That's all digital, obviously. So why not, you know, create the books digitally,
yeah,
and draw digitally, write digitally, and so on. So it's becoming less and less frequent that you find artists that are traditionally taught as far as medium goes, as far as actual oil paints or watercolors or acrylics, or, you know, drawing with a pencil and then inking with a pen or a brush, you know, on the board.
Right.
You're finding more and more that the pencilers who have been working for years are still doing pencil artwork on the Bristol board, but they're scanning it in.
Scanning it in, right.
They're sending it to the inker, and then the inker is doing it on the Wacom tablet,
right,
you know, with you know, Manga Studio or something, that gives them that same look as a pen and ink brush, but it's digital. And you know, if they could, I'm sure, make a real good pencil, you know, from the Wacom tablet that, you know, can hold up in the computer, you know, the pencilers would be doing, you know, the drawing in the computer as well.
And then the inker just needs to kick the levels up a little bit.
Yeah, exactly, exactly. So the technology definitely is changing the way things, the way the artist is approaching the material.
Yeah.
And it's a little bit disappointing because, you know, traditional mediums are called traditional for a reason, is they've been done for centuries and centuries and centuries.
Right.
And there's a tactile thing that comes along with dragging an ink nib across a piece of paper, or dipping, you know, a brush into paint and putting it on a canvas and seeing how it flows, and seeing the texture and the volume and the opacity and the transparency that you can't get in a digital paint.
Right.
Digital paint, you see a pixel of color.
Yeah.
You know,
I think that tactile experience is starting from where you, the creators, begin, still who are doing it traditionally. That translates to me, I mean, as a hobbyist, not just as a retailer, but as a fan of the medium. The tactile experience for me is I still read my paper comics. I own an iPad and I have digital comics, but I will always read paper comics as long as they are produced.
Yeah.
You know, I'm not against digital delivery of the content, because I think it gets it to a much more broader audience.
Sure, it does.
You know, which can maybe translate to maybe more sales, more money for creators.
Yeah.
You know?
But you know, with you know, an iPad, you know, you could take wherever you want to go, put it in your bag, or, you know, just in your backpack or whatever, carry it around, sit in the park and read it. You know, but that battery's going to go dead eventually.
I'm with you.
And if you got 2 comics rolled up and you know, stuck in your pocket, you know, you're not going to pull them out and see them blank because their batteries ran dead.
Yeah, yes, listen to this right here.
You're going to have a comic that is going to be with you wherever you want to go.
Yeah.
And for me, that is what will always keep me reading comics, is that I will have them and have them in front of me, and I don't have to rely on anything else to be able to enjoy that medium.
Yeah.
So, you know, digital is good, technology is good, but it has its drawbacks as well.
Yeah.
You know, I still paint traditionally. I scan my work in, I make a digital file, I add a little bit here and there, but I don't create from a blank screen to a fully finished image.
Right.
And maybe, you know, there's a barrier somewhere that I don't want to do that because I would lose what has made me an artist, you know, for the past 30 years.
Yeah.
Is you know, squeezing out that paint and you know, getting it on my hands and stinking up the studio, you know, with turpentine and you know, sort of living, you know, that tactile experience of creating, rather than sitting at a cold computer.
I understand.
But you know, for each artist is different, and I do understand that, you know, the artists that are coming up now, their tool is the computer, just like my tool is traditional, and I don't denigrate that because some tremendous amount of work is being done in the computer world, art world.
Oh yeah.
I look at some of the work and it just blows me away.
Yeah.
And there's certainly a lot that the computer can allow that I can't do traditionally. But there's certainly a lot that I can do traditionally that no computer will ever be able to emulate.
Right.
And so there's a balance there. But you know, it's unfortunate that one of the major drawbacks of that is that along with a generation of artists that are learning digital as a medium to tell their stories, there's also that generation of art directors that are coming up that only know digital artwork as well.
Yeah.
And from personal experience, I have lost jobs specifically because I don't paint digitally, which is odd because it should be the final image that the art director or editor is looking for, not how it got to be the final image.
Right, right.
So it shouldn't matter. But as I said, I have personal experience of art directors and editors, you know, asking if I do digital work, and when I say no, then I lose the job.
So now you mentioned that you do your art traditionally, but you do scan it in,
right,
and work on it. So you could still deliver it
digitally. I do everything I do is delivered digitally now.
Right,
correct.
Right. So
yeah, I no longer send an original painting out of the studio.
Yeah. What would be the holdup for something like that?
I don't know.
That's stupid.
And you know, for you know, as a freelance commercial illustrator, it's not my spot to argue with my art director editor.
Yeah,
you know, it really got me angry when this happens. You know, but I'm not going to blow them crap because of it. That's the way they want to run their business. Then they're not going to get my art. Yeah. I mean, it's as simple as that. Yeah. They contact me. They want me to do a piece of art. They ask me if I do it digital. I say no. I scan it in and give you a digital file. And then they say no. Well, we want you to paint it digitally. And I say no, and then lose the job. It's them that's losing out, really. But you know, it makes me, you know, think that, you know, somewhere in the industry there's a short circuit in that the value of the finished art is not appreciated because of the medium that it's done in.
Right.
By certain people who don't have any experience of that medium.
Yeah.
So it's very frustrating for me to see that more and more within the industry.
And something that I think about, and again, I'm not against digital delivery of the content. I mean, as like there's some retailers who are like, oh my God, digital's going to end my business. No, I disagree with that. So, but that's a whole nother ball game.
I think it's a long way away before actual hard copy books are going to disappear. I think there's a grand tradition of comics being printed.
Sure.
And kids love them. They still love comics being printed.
I don't think it'll ever go away.
Yeah.
I think it might fall into the, oh my God, there's a record store. It might fall into that niche.
Right.
Later, decades from now.
Possibly, yeah. But I think that hard copies will still exist.
I agree. And on the topic of hard copies is seeing more and more of the younger artists and moving to the digital format. It's like, how long is it going to take to where there is no more original art available?
Well, you're seeing that a little bit more. There are some artists that I knew, peers that of mine from 15 years ago that created traditional art that you could hold and look at and hang on the wall, that no longer do that. They just do computer art that is in the files digitally. They make a print, or they send the file to the publisher, and that's it.
Yeah.
And I've had discussions with some of these artists, and they sort of regret the fact that there is no original to hang on the wall. But that's a commercial choice. I mean, they are making a choice in their medium. Perhaps maybe they move faster being able to produce digital work.
Okay.
And as a freelance artist, the faster you can turn over work, the more work you can produce and the more money you can make.
Got it.
So they can view not having an original to sell to a collector or at a show, balancing it against how much money they're making from their clients
and the quantity of the work that they're putting out.
The work that they're doing.
Got it.
So for me, I enjoy creating physical pieces of art that you can hang on the wall, and I know that my fans, my customers who buy my artwork, love that as well.
Well, sure, yeah.
So for me, I can't think of a time where I would actually go into fully rendering something from a blank screen to a digital image, because that just, I would feel something is missing in that.
Yeah.
Now, if I was doing roughs or some game design or something where it's worked product that they want and not a finished image, that's a little bit different. But if I was going to create, a cover for like Aliens or something, I wouldn't do it in the computer because I would know, just for me, that it doesn't exist.
Yeah, exactly. And that's the thing is, like, one, paint in this medium is rare to begin with. People, I mean, there's like yourself, John Jamuth, Bill Sinkovich does it. You don't see
Chris
it.
Muller and
Yeah,
Scott Hampton.
I mean,
there's
Williams.
there's a handful of guys that still do it traditionally.
And I get it. It takes a lot longer. I get it. So it's always going to be about the bottom line. But
well, it doesn't necessarily take a lot longer. I can turn over in a deadline situation.
Yeah.
I could turn over a cover in 2 days.
Okay.
If need be.
That's
if I work long hours.
That's awesome.
So I can work as fast as any digital artist. It's just I'm not working in that medium.
Right.
And there is sort of a prejudice against that in certain areas.
Gotcha. So let's circle back to the maybe some of the peers that are doing it digitally now that used to do it traditionally because they're able to pump out more quantity of work. Are they truly making more money than they used to?
Well, one of the things that has happened is because it's digital, there's a little bit bigger market. So guys who are doing painting, like take John Van Fleet, who used to do traditional painting for his books, his graphic novels, his storytelling. He moved into digital, and started playing with that and really enjoyed it quite a bit. So 99% of the work that he's doing is digital. But by opening the door digitally, he has moved also into gaming design, moved outside the comics industry,
Right.
doing some gaming design work, doing some three-dimensional creation for websites and other things.
Okay.
So it's not in today's situation, being a digital artist can open doors for you in other avenues. See, it'd be harder for me to break into digital gaming because I do traditional work.
Right.
Even though it's the same work in the end,
Right.
you know, you get character designs, you get landscapes, you get, you know, pre-production images. You know, it's easier for John to get the work because he already works in digital.
Mm-hmm.
Oh,
Gotcha.
we'll take the digital artist over the traditional artist.
So the doors that you said that are opening, that's kind of a good segue into like maybe some of the new up-and-coming creators that want to get into the comic book medium as a living. Are they going to need to be able to open up all those doors in order to survive? Are they going to be able to do it just in the world of comic books nowadays?
Well, when I do my lectures and talk to students and talk to art students and creative people who are coming up in the field, when I'm doing portfolio reviews at shows and seeing what's being done, I try to strive to make the point to the artist that comics or science fiction artwork isn't the be-all and end-all of art. It's a genre to work in, but to really be successful, not just today, you know, in years past and in the future, it's best to be diversified.
Sure.
So that you can do many different types of subjects, many different types of genres. And the easiest way to do that is learn the basics. Learn how to draw, learn how to paint. It doesn't matter what medium, if you're using digital or traditional. It all starts with the structure, it starts with light and shadow, it starts with composition, all of the very basic, simple things that make an illustration, a piece of art, what it is. Unfortunately, the computer, with the varied programs that you can get that basically build things for you.
Yeah, like Manga Studio.
And 3D programs, Daz and Poser.
Daz, yeah, Daz 3D,
and some of the landscape like Bryce.
Even Google SketchUp.
Even Google SketchUp.
Yeah.
They sort of give the artist a handicap. That might not be the right word, but they're using those tools to create rather than understanding what makes a good piece of art and understanding what shapes create a human form or an animal form or a house or a car. They just import the car or import the house. They don't understand how it's created.
Right.
And so one of the drawbacks to that is we are getting, you know, I go back to the generation thing, but we are getting a generation of technicians rather than artists.
Ooh, that's good.
Because they're putting elements together rather than creating the elements.
Yeah.
And by putting elements together, you don't understand how it's built, and then you start losing the perspective on lights and darks, and composition, tonal things, and it's just, you know, a pretty element here, a pretty element here, and some color over here.
Yeah, and even with some of the 3D programs, you can move the light source around, so they're not really getting that; they're just moving it.
Right.
So
and so it's so it's artists who aren't really creating art. They're technically building an image, but they're not understanding how the eye flows, what color theory is, and how that works with the elements that are within the piece. perspective, things that are all basics that should be taught and learned by the students, so that when they start putting these things into their work, they understand what they're creating.
Right.
Not just saying, here's a guy standing over here, here's a superhero coming down to beat him up, and then there's a building in the back.
Right, drop shadow.
Yeah, exactly. So it's frustrating to see a lot of the kids, and I say kids, I mean just artists who are trying to make their breaks in the industry, bring up portfolios, especially in the digital portfolios, that are obvious that they don't know the basics. They're just creating images. And that's really heartbreaking, because they've put a lot of work into figuring out how to work the programs,
right?
But nobody's really helped them, or they've never asked.
The fundamentals of...
Yeah, exactly. So that's a problem. Another problem is manga, and I know manga is very popular, and I love manga stuff myself.
Yeah.
But there's also a lot of kids, especially young girls, who want to be artists, and they love manga, and they're studying manga to learn how to draw.
Right.
And that's all that they know when they have their portfolio, and it's all manga stuff. That's all well and good, but the world of art is not manga. Manga is this little cubicle over here, and the world of art is like over here.
Right. Well, I'm just saying, like your sci-fi genre. And,
right.
Yeah.
And so, once again, I try to make a point that manga is just an extrapolation of basic forms. And so if you learn those basic forms, you can exaggerate those into whatever direction you want to go. Bigfoot humor stuff, or crazy independent characters, or manga style artwork. But it's all still very simple, basic underlying things that need to be understood before you can start moving into translating them into some other style. So learning manga is not really learning how to draw. It's learning how to copy manga artwork.
Right.
Yeah. So it's sometimes frustrating talking to people, looking at their portfolio and looking at their art, saying, you're doing fine copying somebody else's artwork. Yeah, or copying Jim Lee or Simon Bisley or me,
Yeah.
But that's how they learn. And somebody should have said earlier on, go back to the basics.
Yeah.
And I was fortunate when I started to draw comics. I figured out that it's all sort of based upon elements. The rib cage is round, and arms are sort of cylindrical, and so when I just sort of sketch it, that's the way I would draw it. It just sort of came natural to me.
Yeah.
And then when I started, being taught and reading books about how to do it, well, that just reinforced that I was learning the proper way. And so I was fortunate in being self-taught. I was very perceptive in seeing things beyond just from what they were, and going out and researching things. So I didn't have a teacher during those days, but I made an effort to try to find ways to educate myself.
Yeah.
But nowadays the internet makes it so easy to just type in how to draw.
Yeah.
And you get 100 websites that will show you how to create forms.
Yeah.
Not in the computer, sitting down with a pencil and blank piece of paper and drawing a circle for the head, and cutting it in half so it's two-sided, so the right side eye and the left side eye are in pretty much the same space on both sides,
Right.
and that type of thing, and it's all there just to be had. And I really, make a point to a lot of the artists that I talk with, who are up and coming, learn the basics.
Yeah.
But learn them so you can adapt them to any other type of genre, because the world of comics and the world of science fiction, fantasy art, it may seem big, but there's a much bigger world out there for art. I mean, for design, for architecture,
Yeah.
for costuming, everything that is here, everything that you see starts with a drawing in one form or another. Whether it's a computer drawing or a hand drawn. Someone created that fan. Someone created the blades on the fan.
Right.
They just didn't take a big piece of wood, and start whittling it down with a knife. Someone took a pencil and said, okay, we want a fan blade that looks like this.
Yeah.
That's art. And so the world is very big for someone who knows what they're doing. And if you know the basics and you can draw a human, you can draw a superhuman, or you can draw a guy sitting at a desk, typing on a computer, or a guy changing his tire.
Right.
But if all you know is how to draw big, bulky superhero guys, or girls with big chests, you're limiting yourself to where you can market that talent.
Right.
If all you know is manga, well, yeah, you can go over to Japan and maybe make a living, but you can't make a living here because manga. Well, most of the manga is being imported from Japan anyway.
Well, yeah, literally thousands of books a month.
But you don't see mainstream illustration in America in the manga style.
Yeah.
So it's something that's not taught in schools. Schools tend to teach and reinforce sort of what you want to learn or what the teacher wants to teach you,
Right.
rather than the bigger scope, the bigger world out there. This is what you need to learn to make it in the big world outside.
Yeah.
And I feel very comfortable in sharing what I've learned over my 30 years of experience to the people that I do lectures for at schools, at the conventions when students come up with portfolios. It really needs to be said because it's not being taught to them what the real world is like. They've lived in their world, painting science fiction characters, drawing manga.
Yeah.
That's their world. And school just doesn't really say there's a bigger world out there. They say, you can draw like this, go ahead.
Yeah. Well, I don't know, I think a lot of the up-and-coming creators, their dream is always to work for like the big two.
Right. And, there's nothing wrong with that if you're that good.
Yeah.
But if you're not that good, what are you going to do?
Yeah.
You're either going to know enough about art to be able to start looking outside the industry, or you're going to go to McDonald's and say, I can flip burgers.
You need a bachelor's degree at McDonald's.
Oh, okay. Well, yeah. Then stay in school.
Get your bachelor's in art.
Yeah.
Then do
Yeah.
it.
So it's the world of art is a wonderful place to live.
Yeah.
And I feel I have the greatest job in the world in just getting up in the morning, sitting down at my drawing table, and creating something from nothing.
Yeah.
And I just encourage artists who have that passion to continue along those lines. Don't get discouraged. Learn all you can about art, but don't pigeonhole yourself into a very specific style or a very specific genre. I wanted to draw comics when I was younger, but I learned through just drawing and painting that the world is much bigger than that. So right now I can draw comics, I can paint magic cards, I can do Star Wars covers, I can do toy designs, I can do movie production work, I can paint for myself.
Yeah.
I can do non-genre stuff, big canvas pieces that hang in my house and nobody else sees, but I'm happy with it, and that's my creative outlet and my life.
Okay, we're getting the wrap up here.
We're getting the wrap up?
We're getting the
Okay.
wrap up. If there's one book that you could do a cover for right now, what would it be?
Oh, my own graphic novel, Rail.
All right, fair enough. I like that. I like that a lot.
Yeah, that's something that we're going to look on this year is to reestablish Rail.
Okay.
The graphic novel that came out in 2001 sort of died a very quiet death. And I want to resurrect that because a lot of fans are still interested in that story.
New print coming up soon?
A new printing of it.
Yeah.
I'm looking into a new printing that
Okay.
might be able to fund the continuing. It's a five graphic novel series, so the first one's done. We'll see about reprinting it. There'll be an announcement probably during San Diego about what we're going to do with it. I'm working on some Captain Nemo artwork that will premiere in San Diego. Yeah, here's...
Yeah, show that. This. Come on. Look at that, Nemo. Get a push in on this right here. That's gorgeous.
Yeah, so that's part of a triptych. They're very large canvas pieces. So we're going to do those as prints. I've got... what else? Oh, just any
Hitch coming up.
Yeah, I got Hitch coming up. Monster Massacre. Gonna have a new sketchbook for San Diego.
Yes.
Keep an eye on the blog and the Facebook page for announcements of new projects. I've got a million things running through my head. I told my wife Denise last year was the year of Dave. And then I got sick at the end of the year, so I've added a few more months to this year.
All right.
So this year's going to be the year of Dave too.
All right.
And I've got some really fun things coming out, so please just keep an eye on the internet for what's
Make sure you go by his blog. It's davedorman.wordpress.com. So that'll get you up to speed on everything. And Dave, I just wanted to say thank you. It was a pleasure hanging out with you.
Thanks for having me here. It's great.
I really appreciate you coming out here while you're out here in California. I hope you have a great visit.
We are so far.
All right. There you go, Slicers. Dave Dorman. Go to his webpage.
SliceofSciFi.com